Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. If I can go straight on to the agenda. Item number 1 is the evacuation procedure. There's no fire alarms practices planned for today, so if the alarms go off, we'll treat them for real. So we can vacate the building through either of these doors here. There's nobody up in the gallery, but if there was, there's another fire exit up there and meet across the road by the Yorkshire Bank. If anybody needed any help in getting out, give us a shout. We'll make sure that assistance can be given. It's also a good time to remind people to turn their phones off or to put them on silent, please. Thank you. And also, members will be aware, but others, pretty much all of our committee meetings and full council meetings are now recorded. So this meeting's been recorded and it'll be put out on Facebook tomorrow or the day after. Item number 2 is to receive apologies. Any others? No? Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of July. Are you happy that I sign those? Thank you. And item number 4 is to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary and other interests in accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct. Yep.
Number 2, the Whitestone pub, I declare another interest in that I live on Meadowside, but I'm around the corner, so I'm not affected by the application. And in relation to application number 3, I have had many representations from residents, and I have only given procedural guidance. I have not given an indication as to how I intend to vote. And likewise, Mr. Lewicki, the applicant, I met at a function 6 weeks ago, but again, I did not give any indication as to how I intend to vote.
Item number 5, declarations of contact. Can I just say, as chair, I've had, and I think it's probably all members actually of the committee, have had correspondence from Councillor Clark in regard to item number 3, 120 Lutterworth Road, and also Mr. Morgan. Had people had that letter as well, in regard to the crossing gates, which is item number 1. Okay. Which takes us then on to item number 6, the applications on which the public have indicated a desire to speak. So we'll be going a little bit out of order because the two what we've got speakers on are items number 2, the Whitestone, and number 3, Lutterworth Road. If I just run through the process for members of the public. When it comes to the item that you're here for, the officer will present the report. Following on from that, the speakers have their opportunity to address the committee in the order that we have on the list. I don't think we've had any alterations to this, have we, Claire? No, it says as we printed, yeah. Under the Constitution, you're allowed to speak for 3 minutes. If you can, just press the large button so the microphone comes on. That will help things. But once the 3 minutes is up and the egg timer goes off, I will stop you at that point. That's just to be fair to everybody that they get the same amount of time. However, members at that point may seek points of clarification from something that you've said during the time that you've addressed us. After that, if officers may want to say something else, but if not, then it's normal for me to move the item and get somebody to second it so that debate can take place. Committee will debate the matter and hopefully reach a decision today. I say hopefully, we don't always. Sometimes we defer items for a site visit or for further information, things like that. But normally we'll make the decision on the day. Okay, so that takes us on then to item number 2, which is the Whitestone pub. Jackie, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning application for external works to provide landscaping to include a formalised outdoor area complete with decking, artificial turf and seating to the side of the public house. This public house is surrounded by residential properties and bounded from the immediate neighbours on 3 sides by timber fencing, trees and bushes. The public house is set back from the road with a substantial car park to the front and side. The site is separated from the footpath on Meadowside by a hedgerow. There is currently movable seating benches close to the main door and to the side. That's the main door there going in, and you can just about make out the existing seating areas there. The application has been reported to committee at the request of Councillor Gutteridge and due to the level of objection. There have been 4 letters of objection. These include concerns about possible intensification of noise and disturbance later into evenings and later into the year as the proposal provides external heating. Potential for increased antisocial behaviour close to residential properties, and that there is already ample outdoor space. The letters also state the seating will allow the pub to become more drink-orientated. A petition of 4 signatories reiterates these objections and adds concerns about the loss of the hedge. An extension of time has been granted until tomorrow in order for committee to determine this application. In terms of the principle of development, a number of previous case law examples determines that a public house and its curtilage amounts to 1 planning unit. Therefore, the proposal does not constitute a material change of use, and therefore the only consideration today to be given to these works is the actual physical structures proposed. In relation to the impact on residential amenity, the actual structures are 17 to 21 metres from the boundary of the pub, and therefore it is considered that they do not provide overlooking or overshadowing of neighbouring properties and therefore meets the residential design guide. In relation to noise disturbance to residential properties, the Borough's Environmental Health team have no objection, subject to conditions on hours of use and no amplified noise. It is considered that as there is no material change, the hours of use restriction would be an appropriate condition, but that a condition referring to no amplified noise is realistic and acceptable. In relation to the impact on visual amenity, the design, landscaping and materials are considered to be in keeping with the beer garden. There will be a loss of approximately 20 parking spaces, but as the car park is large, there is still likely to be 60 parking spaces, and it is considered that the proposal would not intensify the site. In terms of highway safety, county highways have no objection subject to 3 conditions. 1 refers to a wheel wash during development. This is considered an unreasonable condition for the nature of the work. The second condition refers to the development not being allowed to drain onto the highway. This is considered an appropriate condition and is shown on the agenda. The third condition refers to increasing visibility at the vehicular accesses to the site. This condition is shown on the addendum. In conclusion, it is considered that the application will not have any significant impact upon the residential amenity of surrounding properties or on highway safety. It is therefore considered that as there is no strong grounds to refuse the application, the recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions as printed on the agenda and addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Sutra Hearn. Okay. If you can, that's it.
Sorry, I submitted a petition on the 5th of July clearly setting out our full concerns and objections to the proposed scheme. I request for your consideration consider all of the points in that document before making your decision regarding the application. In addition, I would like to comment on a number of the points on the agenda before you. Item 2, page 34, the impact on residential amenity. We do not agree with the statement made that the proposed structures would not harm residential amenity by way of overlooking. There are currently 2 evergreen hedges to the front boundary, one being 30 metres long and the other 7.5 metres long. Both hedges are 2 metres high. Both of the hedges are located directly opposite our properties, and therefore our downstairs areas are not overlooked by anybody frequenting the Whitestone. The scheme proposes to remove the hedge and build a low-level posts and roads, leaving the pub completely open to the street scene. As a result, we would all be completely overlooked by potentially a large number of customers in the garden area, the car park and the smoking area. They will be able to see directly into our living rooms, and currently customers can only see our upstairs windows. On the 29th of July, they held a folk festival in the car park during the day and the evening. I have photographic evidence with me to show that if the hedge had not been there, we would have also been overlooked by stage 3 tents, a bouncy castle, along with the people and the cars. The festival involved a very loud amplified sound of singing and music all day and all night. But this only subsided later in the evening due to rain. We believe the creation of a beer garden concept within a quiet residential estate is wholly out of character for the area, unnecessary, and will potentially encourage more antisocial behaviour. We fully accept that we live opposite a public house, and we do not wish to hinder an already successful local business. However, we do not wish to see an increase in the level of antisocial behaviour or be overlooked. The existing plan shows on page 38 indicates there are currently 2 tables and chairs outside. There are in fact 8 tables and chairs already outside. There's a sufficient option for customers to be inside or out. If you are considering granting this application, I would respectfully request that you conduct a site visit before making your final decision, in order that you are able to fully assess the impact of the residential properties located on every side of the Whitestone. If you are then minded to grant the permission, I would request an additional condition be included that the hedges are to remain at a height of 2 metres, or a 6-foot wooden fence is erected to the front boundary in accordance with how it is on the other 3 perimeters of the property. Item 3, page 35, the impact on visual amenity. The first paragraph states that the proposal will not be built with materials which would reflect the surrounding area. We would request that the application is refused, as it is not built on materials of a suitable type for a street scene. Item 4, page 35. 20 car parking spaces will be lost. This will just increase the incidence of cars parked on both sides of Meadowside due to insufficient parking, resulting in access for emergency vehicles being reduced to reach properties. Parents allow their children to run around the car park now. They will potentially hit the car.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? No? In that case, Carl Priestley.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing my application. Our application proposes to upgrade the existing facilities in the existing beer garden by submitting a proposal which we feel will not only improve the appearance of the pub and general site, but will also allow the council to have greater controls upon the use of this area as a beer garden. I'll explain. Unfortunately, there can sometimes be a misconception that the creation of an outdoor drinking area will cause harm to nearby local residents by the intensification of use, when in fact it can be the reverse and can allow the council to have greater controls to control the use of that area. As already mentioned, it is established in case law that the public house and its curtilage are a single planning unit, and therefore the pub-related uses made of various parts of the premises can be chopped and changed without a material change of use occurring. Consequently, the existing drinking area with picnic tables outside the pub is already covered within the single use of the site and doesn't require planning permission. Usually where the drinking can take place outside is controlled by the alcohol licence. Our proposal would upgrade the existing facilities in the established outdoor area and importantly allow the planning authority to put the controls in place which would allow the planners greater control to protect nearby residents from, for example, the noise concerns. The current outdoor area is not governed by restrictions on the licence and therefore there are no planning controls in place that would prevent the outdoor area being used for drinking. We believe that by granting us planning permission to upgrade the outdoor area, it will allow the local planning authority to bring controls which actually improve the current unrestricted use of the area for the benefit of the local residents. In reference to the hedges, the pruning of hedges along the boundary doesn't form part of this planning application, as it's not planning permission isn't required for that work. In conclusion, there are currently no controls in place to prevent the use of this area for drinking, and we believe the granting of planning permission for the upgraded beer garden would benefit customers of the pub. It would benefit the visual amenity of the area and, importantly, address the concerns of the local residents. It would allow the local planning authority to put the controls in place which are not there at present to prevent nuisance to the local residents. And we would agree to extra conditions put on the premises licence that will be in conjunction with any planning permission. For these reasons, we respectfully request that the Planning Committee supports our planning application.
Okay, thank you, Mr Priestley. Any point?
You mentioned the hedges, but only to say you don't need to have permission to take them down. But this is obviously of concern to local residents because Whitestone Road is quite a narrow road and the neighbours across the road will be quite near the users of the car park and the open area which is being proposed.
On the hedges is that if that was a point of contention, we would be willing to accept not pruning the hedges below their current level in order to gain the approval for the actual development that we're here to discuss.
Okay, thank you. And I think that might be a point that could be raised. Okay, thank you. Any other points of clarification? No. Michael Bridger.
Michael Bridger, I'm the regional manager for the EI group. I'm not the regional manager for the Whitestone, that's Richard Skinner. He's actually away on his honeymoon at the minute, so sends his apologies for not coming here. Also, Tony and Rebecca, who are the publicans that have been in the site since the 28th of September 2012. They're also at a wedding as well and send their apologies. The only thing I'd like to say is, as part of the landlord, we've got no record of any disturbance at the Whitestone on our file. However, we're not the premises licence holders. The current tenants there are the premises licence holders, so they will have any more detail. As far as the hedge is concerned, Richard Skinner and I have already had a conversation about this. We're more than happy to actually leave the hedge in place and just prune it to an acceptable height, which we can agree to. So obviously we'll just take that out. So we're more than happy to do that. And really, I'm here to ask any questions on behalf of the landlord. So.
Okay, thank you. Any points of clarification? Councillor Bonner.
How often do you know if the car park's ever full?
Near the Whitestone. I live by the Crow's Nest, that's just around the corner. I had a meeting with Tony and Rebecca 2 weeks ago before they went away, and they were passionate about being here today, but I haven't got that information to hand. But it is a large car park, and I thought there's adequate parking there for the amount of customers it gets.
Yeah, my point being that it's a large pub, and it's going to get even larger, so if we're losing parking spaces, will it cause a problem with on-street parking?
I can't see it causing a problem personally, but I'm not the tenants there.
No? Jackie, anything at this point you need to come back on?
Jackie. In terms of the hedge...
Can you press your button, please?
What? In terms of the hedge, it was just mentioned on the drawings about pruning them. However, a councillor did contact Highways, and there was a third condition put on there about the visibility displays to the actual accesses. So that could mean, if members go along with that condition for the visibility displays, that it may mean some part of the hedge will have to come up for highway safety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation which is to grant planning permission? Is that seconded? Okay, thank you. Any member? Councillor Wilson, sorry.
I suppose in a way I'm in a fortunate position because I actually used to work at the Hayrick, so back in the day when it was the Hayrick, and I've known this pub for almost 20 years, man and boy. I think the concern from the residents is more the rear hedge, which is the conifer hedge line at the back, and the side down by, I think it's number to Meadowside on that side of the road, the one which has just been sold. I'd like to see if it's possible to condition about keeping those in, because they are the ones which keep the boundary and prevent the noise between the Meadowside side and the Gorse Farm Road side, which is, I think, where the concern is arising from. The hedges at the front about the visibility display, since the new tenants have taken over, and they have done a very, very good job, I must admit, in keeping that down and bringing it back into use, actually. That isn't so much of an issue. But I would be interested in officers' thoughts on conditioning about keeping those trees in. Otherwise, I think it might be a case of residents having to apply for a tree preservation order. It's unusual. We don't like doing them on conifers, I know. But I'm looking at some of the neighbour responses here. And I have to admit, on page 32, point number 5, this will make the pub more drink orientated. I am slightly perplexed by that one, Chair. Since Tony and Rebecca have taken over the pub, it's become more food orientated. In my day, it used to be a proper drinkers pub, until you had the advent of the smoking ban, and you had all the various problems that entailed, and forcing people outside, and the pub trade took a hit. I was there when it become more drink orientated. It might move it back towards a more balanced approach, because it's now more of a food base and a wet base pub. But I don't think that's the case. The car parking, I'm not concerned about. It only tends to get full when there are big events at the car park. I've worked there, seen it happen, I've driven past it. It only tends to get full when there are big events like parties going on in the pub. In the course of the day, normally, if it's a normal running day, there are still plenty of car parking spaces there. I am surprised about the concerns about antisocial behaviour, because they haven't been raised to me as ward councillor, and I haven't seen any particular problems. There used to be some problems down the side in the Jitty between Meadowside and Gorse Farm Road with some antisocial drinkers at one point, but that isn't something which has been raised. However, I think local residents could have their fears allayed by the fact that if there were concerns, then we can, as councillors or the council itself, can look at calling in the licence to have the premises licence reviewed. If the premises licence is still the same as when I used to work there, and I don't remember seeing any applications to change it in the 8 years I've been Whitestone ward councillor, most of the cut-off point is 11 o'clock at night. That's when the final bell is rung, then you have your supping up time. On a Sunday, it used to be 10:30. I don't know whether they've kept the times the same as when I used to be there, but still, it only tends to be late night when the days, your New Year's Eve, etc. But there has always been, and I know because I've been on the receiving end of concerns from Gorse Farm Road when I used to work there. I used to have them on the phone when I worked there, saying it's too loud. But you have this balance between a working pub and a neighbourhood, and the pub was put in at the same time as the estates, and you're not going to get around that. The only way you'll get around that is if the pub closes, which I don't want to see, because that would be a particularly nice site for 12 to 15 houses to be put on there, and I'm sure local residents would be up in arms if that site was turned into a little housing estate on there as infill. So, on balance, I'm happy to go with this, but I would like to see a condition attached about maintaining those conifer hedges at the rear and at the side. I think it's all right having the assurances from the agents, but I would like a bit more protection, if at all possible, that it is in writing. But I think we also have to remember the balance that we can control things through licensing as well, Chair.
Thank you. About maintenance, I'm a bit concerned about outside construction, where things are open to the elements, the weather, and long-term maintenance. Quite a lot of pubs have outside drinking areas, and quite often the tables and chairs, they're not really fit for purpose. So I'm a bit concerned in the long term, because one of my colleagues just said pub trade goes up and down, doesn't it? 1 minute a pub's, or 1 year a pub's popular, and the next year it's not, for whatever reason. So I'm a bit concerned that in the long term, that this external area is going to be maintained to a similar standard that the internal would be. You know, most pub landlords, if they have a leak in the roof, they fix it because it's going to wreck the building. But wooden structures that are open to the elements can easily suffer maintenance issues. So I'm not sure if there's anything we can do about that, but I'm concerned that here in the town that we we keep all our building stock of a high maintained standard. So I'm not sure, like I say, if anything can be done about this, but it is a concern I have with lots of buildings, not just this pub. Thank you.
Member. No, can I just, Councillor Pomfret?
Can Whitestone pub all that well, but my view of the hedge, and particularly I don't really know much about the hedges, but if I was living opposite the pub, I don't know how many houses there are, but quite a few, I would be concerned about not just the hedges round the side and at the back, but those at the front. So if those could be included in any condition, I think that might be a good idea. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thank you to her as well. And the question is it possible to put that condition on to try and protect? I mean, it's very unusual for this committee to want to protect conifers, but if they're acting as an acoustic and visual screen, then maybe there's some point to it. In regard to the hedgerows to the front, if it's possible to condition that again, I think I would probably support that, except for where it's necessary to achieve those visibility space, because clearly there needs to be that safety aspect of it. So if that's kind of the wording that Councillor Wilson's putting forward to try and protect them, you're going to tell us whether or not we can anyway. But obviously with the exception of making that visibility display safe, I think we could include that. And regardless of which way this goes on the vote, I'd like to see that included, because if it did go to an appeal, then at least you've got that included in it. But we look forward to your professional advice on whether we can condition that or not.
The key thing with planning conditions is that they have to be fairly and reasonably related to the development. The situation we have with the Whitestone Public House is that, as I understand it, the licence relates to the whole of the site, so there is already outside drinking that could take place, irrespective, and it could take place anywhere on the site, irrespective of this particular planning application. So my personal thoughts on whether we can add a hedgerow condition for the land all surrounding it is that it's not really related to the development that we're considering. It's not fair to make people keep something as a result of a planning application where a problem already exists. There are other issues in terms of adding that condition in relation to the fact that if the conifers are very tall and we say they have to be maintained, they could be causing problems to the residents immediately at the back in terms of loss of light and sense of enclosure. And if they were to apply under the high hedge legislation to have them removed, they would have to apply to vary conditions as well, or have the height reduced. So we could be adding more and more problems by putting that condition on. I personally don't think that we could support the hedgerow retention around the back. However, we could deal with the hedgerow to the front, because clearly people have to access the site to be able to use the beer garden, and making sure that it's safe to access the site is something that's fairly and reasonably related to that development. So I don't think we could support the hedgerow around the back, but we can to the rear. Yes, sorry, to the front.
Councillor Wilson.
Don't think it would be fair and reasonable, but if I don't think it would go to appeal if it was because they've given an indication that they would be willing to accept those conditions. Could you argue it is fair and reasonable, given the fact they have here today, and it is recorded, said that they are willing to accept those conditions?
We still have to ensure that conditions comply with the planning legislation. We cannot put conditions on that are not fairly and reasonably related to the development. It could result in appeal, whether they are likely to appeal or not. There may be a case where there is a situation where they could try to vary that condition. In addition to that, There's a situation, obviously, that... Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about the noise and disturbance issue. We're asking to put that condition on to try and protect for noise and disturbance to the surrounding properties. However, this application will have a condition about amplified noise being outside, so they can't actually do amplified noise outside as a result of this application. So there is an additional level of protection that we would be putting on anyway. So I don't think it's actually necessary as well to put that condition on.
Councillor Longdon.
Because we're supposed to be talking about this decked area for the pub, not the surrounding hedgerows and things like that. They've been there for donkey's years. I can't remember the last time I went in. It was called a hayrick last time I went in it, and it's a long time ago. And I don't remember seeing any hedges at the back, but I really don't think we should be talking about hedgerows because they've been there and they're in existence. Probably they're going to stay in existence. I don't know. But whether they can be taken down or not, I don't think it's relevant to this application. We're here to actually look at the application for the decked area. And from what I can see from this, we're formalising what is already an informal arrangement anyway. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we should actually be even considering the hedges, other than the fact that we've had a recommendation from the county to widen the splay or make the splay better. And that's the only consideration I think that we need to take. And if we're going to do that, it's already in the conditions. So I think we should just get on and forget about the hedgerows because it's nothing to do with this application.
There's always a presumption in favour for applications unless it's green belt, and then the presumption's the other way. So there's a presumption in favour of the application, and all I see in the suggestion was to try and mitigate any extra issues with the extra people that could possibly be in the outside area. But, you know, people see things differently, and that's fine. I've certainly listened to the professional advice. Councillor, is anybody else wishing to speak? I've got somebody else who wants to come in that's already spoken, and then I want to try and move on then. Councillor Bonner.
Yeah, the way I look at this, I might look at it different to my colleagues, but there's nothing new there. We've got an extension to a pub that's more or less a third, half as big as the original building would be. If we were discussing a building, there would be insulation requirements. There would be noise insulation and heat insulation. So here we've got an outside area. Okay, so all of a sudden it's not, doesn't matter about noise and heat. Well, I think it should, you know. So I think we should be considering the noise elements, because if it was instead of being an open area, if it was an extension to the pub as the building, there would be insulation properties insisted by building regulations on noise and heat. So I've got two concerns: the external heating. Now, I don't understand external heating, full stop, and the noise. I think we should be considering it because it's an extension to a building that's quite a considerable sized extension. Be it it's not got a roof, I'm not quite sure is really applicable. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, we are considering noise. There is a condition that is proposed to restrict amplified noise. So that's something that is being considered.
And there'll also be, I assume, conditions attached through the licensing regime. And what we're always advised is we shouldn't be duplicating something that's already can be enforced by somebody else. Right, I'm not exactly sure where we are with the idea of the condition now. I can't support the full one because of the officer advice in regards to the conifers at the rear, and you know, like another site, it might end up people coming back to us on numerous occasions for removals. What can you just remind us of what you wanted to move? I think
It was just information from the officers first.
Oh, was it? Okay, all right then. Okay then. So we've got nothing formal on the table with that, which in which case, You happy? You looked at me a little bit confused then. Okay. In which case I'll move to the recommendation which is in front of us. It's been moved and seconded, and that is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed and to those on the addendum as well. All those in favour of that? That's unanimous. Okay. Okay, so that's approved. If we can move on to item number 3 then, 120 Lutterworth Road.
This application is for the demolition of the existing detached bungalow and the erection of a detached 2-storey property plus rooms in the roof to provide 5 self-contained flats. The site is on the corner of Lutterworth Road and Crowhill Road, with the junction to Middleburg Close on the opposite side of the road. The houses in this part of Lutterworth Road are on fairly large plots. The side boundaries is timber fence, and there is a hedge to part of the side boundary with Crowhill Road. The existing bungalow has a dormer to the side and to the rear. That's the existing bungalow that's on the site at the moment, and that's the proposed front elevation. Obviously, that's the location plan there. To the rear is a relatively new bungalow known as 2A Crowhill Road. That's that one there. This has habitable windows to a living room and bedroom to the side fronting the proposed development on that elevation there. The neighbouring property, number 118, that one there, is also detached. The nearest areas to the proposal is a dormer to the front with a blank side elevation. To the rear, the nearest area is a single-storey flat roof extension, just there, shown there. The new proposal is to the side of 118 Lutterworth Road, comprising of 2 storeys plus roof lights and dormers in the roof to provide a 5th apartment. 3 of the apartments are proposed to have 2 bedrooms and 2 apartments have 1 bedroom each. The proposal shows a first-floor balcony to the front, the side of which to 118 is to have a high-level screen to protect views to this nearest neighbour's window. The proposal is to provide amenity space for the new occupiers to the front, including cycle storage, and a car park for 8 cars to the rear. This car park is to be separated from the neighbours by an acoustic fence. The application is being reported to committee at the request of Councillor Gutteridge. There have also been 19 letters of objection from 9 addresses. The objections include concerns about the impact on highway and pedestrian safety, impact to traffic flows in the area. Concerns include the possible increase of street parking where the path is already narrower than normal and where existing parking and speed restrictions are already ignored. Objections also consider that the proposal is too large and overbearing and out of character to the surrounding properties. Loss of the openness of the corner, increased noise and pollution, and loss of privacy and light to neighbours. There are also concerns of disturbance from the new car park, including headlights, as it is adjacent to neighbouring residential properties and gardens, and also about insufficient bin storage. An initial petition of 85 signatories reiterates these objections and also states that there is no demand for this type of property in this area and that the nature of the apartments will mean it is likely to be for short-term occupation, unlike the existing area, which tend to be residents of long standing. The petition also mentions concerns about increasing air pollution in the area, which is already unmanageable. A further petition was then received with the initial 85 signatories plus a further 18 signatories. You will note from the addendum that County Councillor Jeff Clark has objected to the application and asked that if members are minded to approve, that they carry out a site visit first. You will also note from the addendum that MP Marcus Jones has also been in touch and given his response. An extension of time has been granted in order for committee to determine this application. In relation to housing need and land supply, it is already well documented that the council does not have a 5-year land supply, and the proposal would mean the redevelopment of an existing plot. The proposal is also deemed to be in a fairly sustainable location. In relation to the impact on residential amenity, distance standards comply with the Residential Design Guide. In relation to 2A Crow Hill Road there are 22 metres from new rear windows to the windows of this neighbouring property. This meets the distance of 20 metres set out in the Residential Design Guide. The proposed first floor windows are over 16 metres, that's that distance there, to the boundary with 2A, and therefore easily the distance of 7 metres set out in the Residential Design Guide is met. The proposal only extends beyond the rear original wall of 118 Lutterworth Road by 2.4 metres. That's the measurement there. The Residential Design Guide states that 2-storey projections can be up to 3 metres in length are considered acceptable. In addition, this neighbour has a large single-storey extension, that part there, closest to the proposal, and therefore there is no immediate adjacent amenity space to be impacted upon. Drawing a 60-degree line from the nearest first floor front and rear windows of 118, you can just see the lines we put in there, those red lines there, shows there is no impact to these nearest windows. There are to be habitable windows to the side facing onto 118, but these are within the blank elevation of 118, so will not overlook the gardens, the windows or gardens. A screen on the balcony will also provide some privacy to the nearest front window of 118, that's there. In terms of noise and nuisance, Environmental Health have no objection, subject to the provision of an acoustic fence to the boundary treatments with the neighbouring properties. This will also screen the bin store, which is proposed to be within the car park, close to the neighbouring boundaries. There. MBBC Refuse have no issues with the type of refuse collection point provided. In conclusion, it is considered that the proposal is acceptable in terms of the neighbouring properties. This drawing here, 2 houses there, shows the street scene from Lutterworth Road and shows the scale and massing of the proposal to the nearest neighbour, number 118. The proposal is approximately 200 to 300 millimetre wider than the neighbouring property, and the eaves level are only slightly higher than this neighbour's area, those areas, except for obviously the cat slide roof at the front. The ridge heights are also comparable. Whilst the proposal is replacing a bungalow, the house on the opposite side of Crow Hill Road, number 126, is 2-storey, and the majority of properties in the area are 2-storey. The only difference being the bungalow known as 2A Crow Hill Road, which is to the rear. I've shown you that. The application states that it will be red brick with a gabled clay tile roof. However, it is considered acceptable to approve materials of higher condition at a later stage to ensure that they are in keeping with the area. There is to be brick quoins at the corners of the walls, with stone headers above windows to provide interest to the elevations. The proposal provides 8 parking spaces. This equates to a ratio of 1 to 6 spaces per property. In reality, it's likely to be 1 space per property plus 3 visitor spaces. This compares to the maximum standard suggested in the Borough's parking guidance of 1 space per 1 to 2 bedroom dwellings, although little weight can be given to this document as it's no longer an extant document. County Highways have no objection and are happy with the amended car parking layout. They previously objected when the car park was to the front of the property. In conclusion, it is considered that the application will not have any significant impact upon the residential and visual amenity of the surrounding area or impact to highway safety. The recommendation to committee is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions as printed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guthridge.
Members of the Planning Committee. As Councillor for Whitestone, I wish to speak about this proposed development of 120 Lutterworth Road, where the property lies. I have had many concerned residents approach me regarding the development of this site, and even the applicant today rang me. The proposed development of this site lies on the corner of Lutterworth and Crow Hill Road, which are both busy roads. Lutterworth Road is one of the main roads into Nuneaton from Bulkington, Wolvey and the surrounding villages. The property lies next to a very busy junction with traffic turning both left and right, and there is regular congestion at the junction, especially during school time and rush hour. This development is for 5 self-contained flats, which states on the application. It will be a 2-storey property with living space in the roof, so will be a 3-storey property. This will lead to other properties in the proximity, including some bungalows being overlooked. The property seems to be an extremely large development of the site where a bungalow currently stands. As the plan states, there will be 5 flats. This could lead up to 10 cars being on the site if each property has 2 occupants and both have vehicles. And they say that 2 spaces, there physically isn't space for the amount of cars, and the other plans will lead to an increase in noise, traffic and cars being parked on the main road to a very busy junction. The entrance to the property was situated on Crow Hill Road. However, turning in and out of that entrance is a disaster waiting to happen. Well, where are the bins going to be placed? Looking at the site plans, there doesn't seem to be enough sufficient storage or space for the amount of bins required. In my view, and the residents' view, the current plans are a vast overdevelopment of the site. Before a decision is made on this proposed development, I strongly urge and encourage that a site visit is carried out during the late afternoon, during term time, to see the issues that have been brought to my attention and the concerns of the local residents. Thank you.
Thank you. No. Mr. Martin Trees.
I'm here representing 118 and 2A. 2A has my 85-year-old stepmother in it, and I'd like to raise 3 things. The first one is a factual inaccuracy, that the highways believe that they had the right numbers in place. Apparently, they want a 2.4 metres back from the road and 35 metres to view in both directions. And as pointed out to me, or I pointed out to them at 4:30 this afternoon, they can't do it. It's wrong. You physically cannot do it. The geometry doesn't work. I understand that there has been a subsequent note requiring another, some form of addenda that's come through, but that's because it was pointed out to them. If he worked for me, he would be getting something of a rocket for inappropriate attention to detail. The second thing is 22 metres and privacy. I'm sorry, but I can see 22 metres, and my 85-year-old stepmother can see 22 metres. And when those 5 windows stare straight into her bedroom and her living room, I'm sorry, but I don't understand where 22 metres becomes something that you can't see beyond. It's just not appropriate. The back garden, and just to be honest, I'm not a planner and I'm not an architect, but I just try and make it real. I hope you don't mind, but this gentleman here, would you want your 2 colleagues that have travelled with you, 2 family members or whatever, to sleep within this distance?
Excuse me. it's your opportunity to address the committee, not
Sorry.
question other people in the chamber.
Sorry, forgive me. The reason I used that was I was trying to find 15 to 20 feet, and that's about that distance, which is the distance from the rubbish from 5 houses to my mother-in-law's personal bedroom and living space, and the only outdoor amenity space she has is between those 2 spaces. So as a committee, I think I was trying to make the point that it's very painful and very ugly. The second point would be on safety. Councillor Guttridge has already mentioned it. If you put 13 people there, the demographics for that sort of space would hint at 1-for-1 car ownership at worst. Some of them do have motorbikes and other things. And the car parking space is insufficient. That road is exceptionally dangerous because getting in and out of that space is bad enough, but people will park on that space because there is not enough space. And that on the opposite side of the road, roughly level with the boundary between 2A and 118, the Wilkinsons have a double garage which was moved down to that position so that they could use it more safely, and they have blocked it up because they can't get in and out of there at peak flows, which amplifies Councillor Guttridge. Any conditions that are placed on this is really perfuming the pig, and it's a pretty dangerous pig and an unpleasant one at that, as from what I can see from the development. And I would ask that you refuse this planning permission.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Stanley.
I think safety is the top of the agenda. There is nowhere for a car, lorry or bus to swerve if a collision was to happen on that Lutterworth Road by Crowhill Corner there. And this plan has put a child's play area and a sitting area parallel with the Crossroad Junction. If you look at the other sides of the build, the swerve would be into residents' gardens on all sides. You as councillors have to put the public first and create a safe environment with your planning department. This project is not safe, nor is it suitable in such a dangerous, hazardous position. There are 3 recreational areas, 8 yards from this build, away from this junction, 2 parks, football pitches, a cricket pavilion, not to mention the walk to Whitestone Infant and Junior School. All entrances to these amenities are opposite this junction, Mill Close. How do you suppose the younger generation or the older generation are going to handle crossing a road as busy as it will be with traffic backing up from Crowhill Road to the Crossroad Junction? Because of the car park for the build. We also have the right to breathe clean air into our lungs when sitting in our gardens. This car park to the build will create such a build-up of traffic that pollution will increase in what is already a polluted area. If you check, there is contaminated waste buried under Pool's land, and then to the right of the junction you have a garage with a peak traffic problem of school collection at 3 o'clock, people coming home from work at 4 p.m, which goes on to 6:30, and then you've got the privacy. Taken from residents in a leafy suburban area who have been here for years and are and would they be entitled to grants for triple glazing they will need if it goes through. The car park adjacent to their homes, doors opening and shutting all hours of the day and night, headlamps glaring into the windows, 3-storey windows in the roof area looking down into the gardens, and a balcony that you can actually look around the shield that they're going to put there into someone's bedroom. Refuge from 8 dwellings emptied every 2 weeks. This project stinks, as will all the accumulated rubbish over 2 weeks from 8 residents. It's a definite no-no. You've got safety problems, environmental issues, privacy issues, and a monstrosity of a build standing forward of all other buildings, not even in line with the buildings down Lutterworth Road, with a play area and a seating area parallel with the Crossroads Junction. An accident waiting to happen. Councillors and planning cannot say this was not highlighted All noted,
Okay.
as it is in all letters of objection.
Thank you,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stimler. Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Councillor Bonner.
Chair, I think you're a local resident.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and-
I'm opposite this building.
How long have you lived there, please?
12 months. But the property was bought for us to retire in.
No, my question being, I wondered how many buses had swerved into front gardens and buildings in the last 12 months.
Well, why don't you inquire?
Well,
Why don't you inquire?
Okay.
The police would give you that.
Okay, but then, are there any other points of clarification? No. Mr. Lewicki. Yeah, sorry, could you turn your microphone off and to trees, sorry, yeah.
Chairman and members, thank you for you letting me address you. Planning permission was granted for a 6-bedroom, 2.5-storey house on this site in June 2008, which is similar to the proposed. After receiving positive pre-planning application advice from your officers and Highways Agreement, a planning application was submitted in March 2017. However, following objections, with extensive discussions with your officers, a revised application now sits before you. This includes reducing the size of the building. The 2-storey length is now smaller than previously approved in 2008, moving the proposed building further away from 118 and from the bungalow 2A than previously approved in 2008, and relocating the proposed access from Lutterworth Road to Crowhill Road and blocking off the Lutterworth Road vehicle access completely. On discussions and meetings with Highways, they consider the existing access from Lutterworth Road and as previously approved in 2008 to be a hazard, and consider the access now as presented to be an improvement despite potential of additional vehicles. The scheme has the full support from your officers, as you will see in the report. We have sought to express a high quality appearance which we believe will make a positive contribution to the character and local distinctiveness of the area, whilst providing much needed housing and saving greenbelt land elsewhere. Within the street scene, you will see that the height and the width of the building is the same as the neighbouring property 118 on the left. It is the same height as the neighbouring properties on the right, but smaller in width, varying from 140mm to 5 metres for the 4th property. The length, including the single storey, is 1.5 metres smaller than the neighbouring property 118. To conclude, I believe this scheme will greatly improve the sustainability of the building, which itself is in a very sustainable location, and provide 5 much needed homes on a brownfield site. I hope you agree with myself and your officers that this proposal is an appropriate design and scale without detriment to neighbouring amenity and is in accordance with your planning policies in full. I respectfully ask the committee to grant planning permission with the conditions set out in the officer's report. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Could you...
Yes, sorry.
Councillor Pomfret.
Give us any detail about who you might expect to live in these 5 units. I noticed 3 of them have got 2 bedrooms, so I assume that is...
a similar development over the road.
Oh, no.
The road on Lutterworth Road of 8 apartments, and that has fairly older residents, and that's the sort of occupants I feel will buy these particular flats.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
The application over the other side of the road on Lutterworth Road, I presume you mean the Adrian Burr development
Yes.
that was there. Are you aware that that was 2 plots of land knocked into one as opposed to 1 plot of land which we are considering tonight?
Yes, but I say that's 8 flats than 5, which is obviously what's proposed. And,
Okay.
and also the ones over the road are very, very large.
Okay, thank you.
Half times the size of these.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but if I sound strict, it's because I am, but I'm just complying with the Constitution.
Yes. The reason I believe that it will be occupied by the older sort of generation, if you like, is because the value I see will be you could get a house and a young family or younger people would tend to go for a house at the same sort of value nearby.
Okay, but I mean, you've covered that, but legally, I guess anybody could go in there. Are there... I'm sorry, I can't bring you back. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Are there any other points of clarifications to Mr Lewicki? No. In that case, anything you want to come back on at this stage? Okay. No? Okay then. To enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed? Is that seconded? Okay, thank you. Any member? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I would actually like to formally move a site visit. As a local ward councillor, I have received many pieces of correspondence over this application, and I do have some concerns, particularly in regard to street scene, because it is bringing the building line forward, and from the plans I can't work out how many metres it is, but it looks to be about 3, perhaps 3.5 metres forward on the scale they were implying on that one. So I have a concern that it might be incongruous with the street scene on that basis, and I'm also concerned quite particularly about the access and egress being moved onto Crow Hill Road, because we all know in this modern age that most families tend to be two-car families, so that would take up 10 spaces to begin with, and you're only on about having 5 spaces for the properties there, plus 3 visitor spaces. I'm concerned, particularly on that busy junction, that if you start having visitors parking along the side of Crow Hill Road, you will be creating a traffic hazard, because it is a particularly busy junction, and you have a shadow island coming into it, which is always congested at peak time. So you've got the traffic coming from the Esso garage coming down and queuing, causing problems with the flow of the road down Lutterworth Road into town. You then have problems with the traffic coming out of town turning into Crow Hill Road as well. So I'm concerned about that. And also bearing in mind that the borough plan documentation actually says, and I think it's section 2, because I looked it up before I came this evening, it says there in particular that one of the key stressors in the borough is Lutterworth Road B4114. And we are putting additional pressure onto that existing network, and I don't see anything which will help mitigate all the traffic coming in and out of that access and egress, because at key times of the day and night, when you've got your school run and when you've got your rush hour traffic coming back in, I don't see how people are going to get in and out of that access. And I'm also concerned, like one of the residents mentioned, about moving the garden to the very front. That is out of keeping with the area. So you are changing completely about face the whole area. So I think the whole area would benefit from a site visit for residents for the committee to actually see what the implications would be on the ground. I think members would have a very difficult time actually trying to park at the time of day we would be going on a site visit, never mind the key critical periods of 7:30 to 9 o'clock and then 4:30 till 6 o'clock, which we wouldn't be visiting in anyway. But I think members would have fun trying to park on a site visit at 2 o'clock. So I would move a site visit, Chair.
Yeah, I probably should have got somebody to second it before you had your speech, but it's been seconded anyway, so... Right, it's been moved and seconded about a site visit, so I'm going to sort of go down them lines at the moment. Who wants to speak in that element of it? Councillor Longdon.
I'm not opposed really to the site visit. What I am concerned about is the misconceptions that are going on here, that we have some sort of control over the road safety issues where we don't. And we are constantly told that if the county council, as the highway authority, has no objections, then if we then refused an application and it went to appeal, we would lose. And that's happened. And every time we lose, it costs the council taxpayers of this borough a lot of money, depending on what the costs are. And I'm mindful of that. I have to be mindful of that because that's a responsibility that we all carry. And at the end of the day, it's not within our gift to turn down applications. We might think that it's not safe, but if the county council doesn't think if the county council thinks it's okay, then we are snookered. quite frankly. So I'd like to lay those fears. We do not have that control, and that's with the County Council's gift. And I'll go and see the site visit, but that'll be in my mind when I tell you when we're there.
Well, it's not been decided yet. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if you misunderstood me. I wasn't seconding the site visit.
Oh. I know some...
I'll agree with my colleague there about misconceptions. I think there's a lot of misconceptions here. If I wanted to visit anywhere in that area and wanted to park my car, I'd park it on the Paulsland car park. It's only a short walk away. I know this area fairly well because I've been cycling up and down there to my grandson's childminders nearly all summer. And for two novice cyclists getting from Nuneaton Road or Bulkington Road, Nuneaton, down Crow Hill Road, recently wasn't a problem. I mean, normally we don't go that way. We don't go on the roads. But I found that the motorists were very kind, very considerate, with two young boys in the supervision of their grandfather crossing the road on their little bikes. I'm not even going to tell you how old they are because I don't want you to be shocked, surprised. But I don't think there's the issues that we think there are in road safety or in parking. There's a huge car park over on Paulsland. It's a lovely open space. Why would you want to park your car on the road when you could stick it in a car park? Thank you.
Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to go on the site visit as well. I do want to sort of back up the comments that have been made about the highway. Junction problems are all over the borough. Let's be honest. This guy in front of me will agree wholeheartedly. There's too many cars around. But we are where we are. I'm always fascinated as well by the phrase, it's not in keeping with the area. I never know what that means, to be honest. I just never know exactly what that means. Does that mean some areas are entitled to things and other areas are not? Or should be like this or should be like that? Not a phrase that I'm a fan of, shall we say. But I do have one question, because it's been mentioned by somebody about the building line. And I notice the MP talks about the building line. Now I can remember coming on this committee long time ago, and I used the thing in front of the building line. And I was told then, going way back, no, Councillor, no such thing as the building line. Now, could I just have clarification on that, because I think it's quite important, this idea of a building line.
As officers, we don't use the building line for assessment. What we do is look to see whether things would be out of character, over prominent or over dominant in the street scene. So just because something projects forward doesn't mean that it's unacceptable, because we look at the whole of the surrounding area and the general character of that area. And we obviously in this case have come to the conclusion that we consider it's acceptable in relation to its impact on the street scene.
Okay, yeah, I've got three questions actually, which relate both to the proposal for the site visit and if we'd been going into a general debate. But one of them has just been asked about the building line. Could I ask then, it's been one of the reasons put forward for objections was about the air quality of the area. I notice that Environmental Health have no objection. So what is the evidence to say that the air quality is unacceptable? Because that was the word that was used.
It isn't, as far as I'm aware, part of the air quality management area. So we couldn't take that into consideration on this. Okay, and in regards to highway safety, that's another issue that's been raised by a number of people. We're here to decide things on the evidence put forward to us. What evidence has been provided by the police or the emergency services in regard to highway safety and road accidents? I actually got the figures just this morning from Warwickshire County Council in relation to the number of accidents at that junction. They've gone back in 5 years. Now bear in mind these are accidents that are actually reported to the police. There has been 2 collisions in the last 5 years within the area. Both of these were in 2014. One was actually at the junction, and one was a little bit further along the road, somewhere around there, where a jogger looked without crossing and was run over. Without looking, yeah. That's the only 2 collisions that we have on record through the county records. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm going to take a vote now on whether we go on the site visit or not. But from what I've heard no objections from any authority in regards to highways issues, air quality issues. The building line thing has been explained. The only thing I could see that would be an issue, and again it's down to personal choice, would be design, and yet it's not really something that's been spoken about. Nevertheless, I'll move to the vote. It's been moved and seconded, a site visit to assess the street scene, the building line, the incongruous nature of the proposal, and the access and egress to the proposed site. Everybody understand that? All those in favour of a site visit for those reasons? And against? In that case, no site visit will take place. I'll use my casting vote to say that. Which takes us back onto the main item of it. It was moved and seconded, the proposal to grant planning permission. Councillor Wilson, you wish to speak on it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Now that we're moving on to the substantive motion, I cannot support this application. I am aware of what Councillor Longdon says about highways. However, I don't believe planning has changed that much in the 3 years that I have not been on this committee. That I have sat here and voted on applications to refuse based on what is right and what is in the interests of the residents. And we have all done that as local councillors. I've done that regardless of whether it's my ward or anyone else's. And at the end of the day, if this was just about professionals, there would be no planning committee at all. We would not be sat here as planning councillors. We are here to put the human side and the local knowledge side into planning. That's why we're here, otherwise you might as well just abolish the planning committee and it all be done with by officers. I have lived in the Whitestone area most of my life, and I know that that is a danger waiting to happen. Even during the construction phase, I'm worried about how you're going to get the vehicles on and off that site to do all the construction and the demolition. It isn't like the development over the road where you've got 2 sites being knocked into one. I believe that this is over-intensive on the land. I believe that access and egress is wrong. You shouldn't even consider it until we can get double yellow lines down that side of Crowell Road to prevent parking on there. Otherwise, you are inviting people who are visiting those flats to park in a critical area. Councillor Bonner is absolutely incorrect. There is not a car park over the road because Paul's Land is further on down the road from that site. You're looking at Middleburg Close there, which is over the road from, well, just over the road. It's a bit at an angle from over the road. Mill Close is down the other end of the road, and that is where Paul's Land is and where the car park is. So people who are visiting those flats will not be parking in Paul's Land. They will be parking either, hopefully, in the visitor spaces, but I doubt it because of the number of cars we all have in modern society, but critically down that side of the road. And I, as a local ward member, will not vote for something which puts my residents and my fellow human beings in that area in danger. No way at all. I will not vote for the recommendation, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I mean, what you said at the start, I largely agree with. And yes, we're elected to put forward...
Excuse me, Chair, can I just say something?
No, you can't.
Well, why have you ignored his legal representation?
You can't. You can't. Sorry, you can't. I'm just saying to you, I'm sorry you can't. I'm sorry you can't. You could have put your name down to speak before the meeting. Yes, Councillor Wilson, a lot of what you said at the start of that I agree with. We're elected members that represent our areas, indeed the whole of the borough. However, we have to take the advice, listen to the advice of our professional officers. At the end of the day, it's down to the people in this room whether they do that. And if they feel strong enough in those terms to go to an appeal and speak to an appeal inspector, that's fine. So it's not quite how it's painted. We don't just do it, because I totally agree with you, be no point having a committee if we just did everything that the officers said. But at the same time, we have to take notice of what they do say, because there could be implications for the authority as a whole. Any other member? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, I was conferring about our site meeting, not the future visitors, if I was going to... Anyway, I've got 3 points I'd like to make. One's already been mentioned. What is the character of Lutterworth Road? I'm sorry, I couldn't describe it. It's so varied and completely variable along the whole length of it. We often talk about overlooking habitable rooms. Well, that's usually why most bathrooms have obscure glass put in them. And if I don't want anybody to look into my bedroom, I close the curtains. Just trying to oversimplify something that might be being overcomplicated. And point 3, I'm not being flippant, but 2040 things might change. There's a proposed ban on petrol and diesel engine cars by then, so I think we should start planning for the future. Road safety is going to get better. We only kill 3,000 people a year on our roads at the moment. That's a drastic reduction on what it used to be, and hopefully it's going to get better. So if we had had a site visit, I would have gone on my bicycle, because it's a nice, quite safe road to go along. And just one more point about demolition and construction work. Every week or every 2 weeks, there's loads of lorries go down there, stopping at every house to load up bins and garden waste and all this sort of thing. It causes a bit of chaos for the whole length of the road while they're doing that. There's buses go along the road stopping to pick up and drop passengers off. Causes a little bit of chaos for a few minutes. But I don't see it as a problem. The bin lorries, the buses, the construction work going on other sites on Lutterworth Road, it's not causing a major problem. There's stuff being delivered, builders turning up every day in their pickups. It's not really a problem. Let's just get on with life. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, you. Okay, thank you. Is there any other member? No. Councillor Ian Lloyd.
Yeah, just one thing. I hear what members have said and what officers said in reference to the County Council, and I do agree somewhat with Councillor Wilson on certainly the yellow lines. Is that something that we can condition, or is it because the County Council haven't? Okay, she's shaking her head.
It's outside of the application site. It's not something that the County Council have deemed necessary. It would be down to them as an authority to deal with that under various works that they would need to do. So it's not something that we could put a planning condition on.
Councillor Longdon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm mindful of what Councillor Wilson said as well, but he should have done the training that we did a couple of months ago if he had the opportunity, and he'll find that we're not masters of our own destiny anymore. The law has changed, legislation changed, regulations have changed, and all the power is now mainly with the developers and not with us. And we have to be cognisant of that because of the consequences to this authority. But I must say that I've just had a quick squint through as well. If I wanted to oppose this, I can't find the grounds to actually oppose it on. There's no substantial conditions on this, no substantial problems with it that I can see that would stand up on an appeal. And therefore, I'm not going to follow Councillor Wilson. I will be voting for approval. The issue of road safety, as I've already said, is not down to us, it's down to the County Council. If the County Council are happy with it, they've got no objections, then there's nothing we can do about that.
Okay, thank you. Being moved and seconded, the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed. All those in favour of that? And against? Is it 10? So that application's approved.
You ignored a point of legality brought in by one of the speakers.
If you want to speak to me afterwards or send me a letter, I'll deal with it. Yeah, it's there. Councillor W.J. Hancock. I'm the chair of the committee. Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry.
I don't know why, but can you just check if anybody's got their mic on or anything?
Well, I can't see a red light anywhere, so... Yeah, of course you can, yeah. You're more than welcome to stay, but... Funny way to spend the school holidays, but there you go. Okay, if we can move then back onto item number 1, please. Crossing gates.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full planning application for 11 properties. This comprises of 5 detached dormer bungalows, 2 semi-detached dormer bungalows and 4 semi-detached 2-storey houses. An outline approval for the site was granted in 2015 for 6 houses and 5 bungalows. The site is brownfield and mostly cleared, with trees and hedgerows to the boundary. The site forms part of an old railway line that was sold off in separate parcels of land some years ago. The proposal is at the end of Oaston Road and is parallel with the flood relief channel. The proposed built form of the development is adjacent to the development of 4 detached bungalows known as the Maltings and is to the side of number 100 Oaston Road and to the rear of 50 to 58 St Nicholas Road. That's 100 Oaston Road, that's the Maltings, and those are the houses in St Nicholas Road. The actual site boundary extends further beyond number 50 St Nicholas Road, but this part of the site is intended to be given to the council as an area preserved for wildlife, that area there. There have been 2 letters of objection, 4 letters of comments, and 1 letter of support. The letters of objection include concerns about parking, increased traffic in an already congested area, disruption to the footpath that crosses the flood relief channel, and potential pollution to the flood relief channel. The application is being reported to committee as land is to be given to the council and improvements to the paths is being provided in lieu of contributions for play and open space. This is fairly similar to the previously approved application. An extension of time has been provided in order for the application to be heard by Planning Applications Committee. In terms of the principle of development, the principle of development of the site has already been established by the granting of outline approval. As the site is brownfield, national and local legislation dictates that this is land that should be considered a priority to develop, providing that all considerations are or can be made acceptable. In relation to the impact on residential amenity, the residential design guidance standards are met between plots. Where they are not met, secondary windows have been added, or where bedroom windows overlook another plot, the windows are roof lights at high level so as not to allow views. The residential design guide distance standards are met to existing neighbouring properties, which include 100 Oaston Road, which is that one there, that side of that, there. 1 and 4, the Maltings. That's 1, the Maltings, that's the side that will look over the property, and that's 4, the Maltings, their rear garden, so the photo's taken from there. And 56 St Nicholas Road, which is those houses there. The agenda provides a summary of how the assessments have been carried out between plots and to these neighbouring properties. In relation to the impact of visual amenity, the design is contemporary but mirrors features of neighbouring properties and design features such as the roof design. Materials are to be brick, render and some timber panelling. If approved, the bricks could be conditioned to match the surroundings. These are just surrounding photos of the surrounding area. Again, that's Ouston Road, and those are the maltings, just to show the difference in materials. In conclusion, as there are 11 dwellings proposed, it is considered the layout will provide a cohesive group and will match the design, scale and massing of the area. In terms of the impact on highway safety, flooding, drainage, ecology and planning obligations, the Environment Agency, Warwickshire County Council Highways, Warwickshire Flood Risk Management Team, MBBC Refuse and Parks have no objection subject to the conditions as printed. The proposal provides 2 tandem parking spaces per property. As the proposal is parallel to the flood relief channel, which is a wildlife corridor, it is considered that the provision of bird and bat bricks within the structure is an appropriate condition. In lieu of a contribution to play in open space, Parks have agreed that an area of land owned by the developer to the rear of the site is given to the council for wildlife, and as such, access will only be for maintenance rather than for the public. The developer has also agreed and will be required to pay a contribution to the council to tarmac the path on the opposite side of the flood relief channel, along there, for the entire length of the site. As both these require contributions, these will be dealt with via a 106 legal agreement if the application is approved. There is a footpath, you can just about see it there, in front of the site that crosses over the flood relief channel. This is frequently used footpath towards Horston Grange. This narrows considerably in front of the site. The developer has agreed to tarmac part of this land and leave it open to widen this footpath. The land will then be offered to County Highways. In conclusion, it is considered that subject to conditions, the impact of the development is acceptable. The period for consultation expires on the 6th of September. Subject to no new issues being raised at the end of this period and on completion of a 106 legal agreement, as previously stated, it is recommended that the Head of Development Control be given delegated authority to grant planning permission subject to the conditions as printed on the agenda and the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, we have no speakers on this item, in which case, can I move the recommendation, which is grant planning permission, subject to a legal agreement and the conditions printed and subject to no new issues being raised by public consultation that expires on the 30th of August. Any member? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. Quite surprised to see this application, and I'm very pleased in a way because old railway lines, not a lot you can do with them, and apart from turn them into good footpaths and cycle paths. This one's not applicable, doesn't go anywhere, ends up at the main line. I know it quite well, and I'm very pleased to see that the footpath's going to be improved because it's a regular use footpath, not just for Horston Grange, but for lots of people going to the college from this side of town. So that would be a really good thing to have that footpath improved. I'd like to ask a question, because showing my ignorance, I'm not sure what a bird or a bat brick is. Bird and bat bricks?
Brick with an hole in it.
Now, basically, we would have normally have said boxes, okay, but that nowadays there are actual bricks, so you can't actually see anything particularly, but there are holes in formatted bricks. The bricks are larger, so to provide nesting sites for birds or bats. So it's something that's been designed over a few years. No, this is to go in the actual buildings.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Educational as well.
I've got one more question.
Oh.
Where it says the Maltings is a narrow road, can we sort of define narrow? Is that going to be sufficient for two ways or two-way traffic or just single?
Yeah. The access to this proposal is actually a brand new road. The Maltings is completely independent of this. The roads will just be parallel to each other.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Lloyd.
Just on the last comment on the back bricks or bird boxes, whatever you want to call them. You say they're in the bricks. I mean, they're conditioned on the developer. Are they also conditioned on the property owners when they take over? Because I've just got this feeling that if they become a nuisance, they're going to chuck a bit of cement in them.
We'll get there. We can, if you wish, amend the condition to say that the bat and bird bricks need to be retained in perpetuity. So if someone does try to cement them over, we get a complaint, we can go and take action against breach of that condition.
Okay. Everybody seems to be nodding that they would agree that that be included. Could I, just before we make the decision on this, could I just ask on 2 points? Well, one is a comment, tandem parking. I don't normally like that because it creates problems, but the tandem parking on this site looks to me like it's all to do with the individual properties, so they have to live with moving their cars to let somebody else out. I was just concerned that there was an objection from the refuse department. Well, I weren't sure whether it was Nuneaton Bedworth Borough Council refuse or whether it's, I'm assuming it's the refuse department. What are the issues around that and how serious do we see those issues? It's not serious enough for you to put a refusal on it.
No. At the time, there was also highway objections in relation to a turning area. So the turning area at the top of the site has been amended. Refuse have therefore deleted or omitted their objection. Their comments are now that if there was any cars parked, then they might struggle getting along the site, but then you would get that anywhere on any site now.
Okay, thank you. In which case, it's been moved and seconded, the recommendation to grant planning permission as printed. All those in favour of that? And against? And abstentions? Okay, so that's approved. We can move on then to item number 4. Which is 25 Coton Road.
Thank you, Chair. The tree is to the rear of 25 Coton Road and cannot be seen clearly from Coton Road, but can be seen from Riversley Road across the rear of 24A and 25 Coton Road. That's the tree position we're talking about, roughly. Those are the views from Riversley Road of the tree. The application has been reported to committee as a letter of objection has been received stating that other trees in the area have previously been deemed worthy of the council granting tree preservation orders on and doesn't see why this tree should be treated differently. They have also stated that this tree provides this neighbour with visual amenity from their windows and within the street. They object as no replacement tree has been considered and that no specific reason has been given for its felling, such as damage to foundations or due to disease. There is a letter of support from Red Roof's Doctors' Surgery who have concerns about the tree's proximity due to its proximity to the surgery and the potential damage the tree is causing to this building. That's the surgery there. You can just about make out on the photo there. The tree is currently not covered by tree preservation order, but is covered by conservation area consent due to its size. The legislation is not for the council to decide on whether the work is appropriate, but purely on whether the tree is worthy of a TPO. The legislation requires that the council do one of three things. 1, it can place a tree preservation order on the tree if the tree either provides good visual amenity within the street or is an outstanding specimen, or 2, decide not to make a TPO and advise the applicant the work can go ahead subject to standard conditions. 3, decide not to make a TPO and allow the 6-week period to expire. Thereupon, the applicant can carry out the works within 2 years. The tree has been appraised by planning officers and our Parks Department in terms of its visual amenity and the quality of the tree. Officers consider that the tree does not provide special visual amenity within the public realm, as it is set well back within private property and is some distance from the road. Furthermore, the tree has been subject to work previously and is not of particular quality worthy of a TPO. In addition, the tree is fairly close to buildings, so if a TPO was added, this could incur problems in the future. It is therefore recommended that committee grant consent for the removal of the tree and do not place a tree preservation order on this tree. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Once again, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation to grant works to the tree? Is that seconded? Any member? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. We have three options. Difficult one here because we're cutting down an awful lot of trees in the borough. I know there is a lot of trees, something like 120,000 trees altogether, but the last 3 years the council have cut down over 200 trees, and I think, don't quote me, but we're planting something like 14 replacements a year because of the cost. So I'm a bit concerned that we're going to lose more trees than we can really afford to, because the trees are similar importance to the birds and the bees. If we don't have them, say goodbye, we're not here anymore. Okay, that might seem a bit dramatic. Well, possibly too dramatic, yeah, but it's true, we're losing a lot of trees. I've been meaning to spend a day with the tree man to find out a bit more about this subject, but I know the actual tree officer's been off sick for over 6 months, but so I'm questioning how do we specify the quality of a tree? What makes a lime tree less of a quality specimen than an oak tree or a sycamore? I don't understand that. It's can you answer that for me?
It's not the actual specimen of the tree, although sometimes we have in the borough put a TPO on fairly unusual trees, but we're actually referring to the actual quality of this actual tree. You can see from both photos on screen, this tree in the past has been quite severely, I'd almost say pollarded rather than crown reduced, and we would have to take that into consideration. Parks have taken that into consideration because of the amount of works that could provide weaknesses to that tree in the future. It's not a full lime tree that we would expect of that age.
Thank you. I don't want to go against the experts, but I just wanted to try and clarify a few things there. Thank you, Chair.
Any other member? No? In which case, it's the recommendation to grant works to the tree, i.e. the removal of the lime tree. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? And against? And abstentions? Everything done yet? Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't have any items of any emergency nature, so thank you very much for your attendance and declare the meeting closed.